Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Compilation Nation. And if you've never watched this show before, have a look at compilations, whether it's compilations from the 80s or 90s or new ones, compilations of games. We have a look at all the games that are on there and also all the extra features. And on today's episode, we're going to have a look at three compilations from the 80s on the Commodore 64. They sold 1 million, volume 1, 2, and 3. So all three of these combined, we got 12 games we're going to have a look at. These are a lot of really classic Commodore 64 games and some not so classic games. But before we get to the games, let's take a brief look at the covers of these games and what comes inside. Okay, so here's a look at the first volume. We've got games by Ocean, Software Project, Ultimate Play the Game, and US Gold. You'll notice in the bottom right corner it says the Hit Squad. That actually became its own label later on after this series. Here's a look at the two cassettes. We got Beachhead and Daley Thompson. Let's check out the next volume. This one's got games by Ocean, US Gold, and Ultimate Play the Game. Has a quick look at the cassette, at least one of them, Bruce Lee and Matchpoint. And the third volume has games by US Gold, Ocean, Digital Integration, and Activision. Has a look at one of the tapes, Rambo and Kung Fu Master. And here's an overall look at all the games we're going to be checking out. Okay, so now's the fun part. Let's start checking out all those games. Okay, so let's start off with the first volume of They Sold 1 Million, which has Daley Thompson's Decathlon, Jet Set Willie, Staff of Carnath, and Beachhead. Daley Thompson's Decathlon was released in 1984 by Ocean, who ended up releasing 3 games based on Daley himself, who was a British athlete who won 2 gold medals in the 1980 and 1984 Olympic Games in the decathlon discipline. This was the first multi-event game they made about him, and it's a great little game that is, in essence, a blatant rip-off of Konami's Track and Field, but still a really well-done game nevertheless. Lots of events to play through like long jump, discus, 100-meter dash, and many more. It's definitely better in multiplayer mode against a friend, and if you're planning on playing it through emulation, you're gonna need a joystick to play it, or at least map the controls to the keyboard and get ready for your heart to explode. If you like this one, also check out 1985's Super Test and 1988's Olympic Challenge, which is definitely my favorite of the entire series. Staff of Carnath was released in 1984 by Ultimate Play the Game, a company that would later become Rare. This was the first in a series of games they made featuring the character Sir Arthur Pendragon, and Entombed is the direct sequel and a game on one of the other compilations that we'll also be looking at soon. This game is an action-adventure game with puzzle and exploring being its major gameplay components. You search this castle to find all the pieces of a pentagram and unite them while fighting monsters with a range of spells that all have different properties. The graphics are superb for an 84 release and the title music is excellent. It's a pretty tough game, but once you figure out how to use the spells effectively, it's quite a grand adventure. Jet Set Willie was released in 1984 by Software Projects, who the previous year had put out Manic Miner, another game in a similar vein to Jet Set. These games are so quintessentially European in flavor, and you could even throw in Monty on the Run into this mix. And when I say that, I simply mean there were no other games in the world at the time that were quite like them. Graphics, sound, and insane difficulty-wise. Jet Set with its classical score playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the sheer weirdness of the enemies in the mansion, and the pinpoint accuracy needed to make it through certain rooms. It was a super frustrating game to play, but had a bizarre addictiveness that had me coming back for more time and time again. A strangely bizarre platform game that definitely has to be experienced. Beachhead was released in 1983 by Access Software, who later went on to make the excellent Leaderboard and Tex Murphy Adventure series. It was an action game set in World War II with multiple styles and really on-point gameplay that required real skill and wasn't unfair either. It was a great balance of gameplay. You had sequences where you were sneaking your ships through underground caverns, blasting planes and boats with your big cannons, and even driving a tank. It was well ahead of its time for a 1983 release. Don't let the basic graphics and simplistic sound effects put you off. It's a fantastic game and a real gem of the early C64 software releases. Okay, and on to Volume 2, which has Bruce Lee, Matchpoint, Entombed, and Match Day. Bruce Lee was developed by Datasoft and released on the Commodore 64 in 1985. This is a licensed game based on Bruce Lee, the 1970s martial arts phenom himself. The game is an action platform game that has Bruce trying to reach the Wizard's Tower. Along the road to said tower is room after room of death and puzzles waiting to be solved. Collecting lanterns opens secret doors in the ground and walls. Deadly traps are all over the place, from fireballs out the walls to electric floors of death. They're all waiting to try and take you out. You also have Yemo, a dodgy green Buddha dude, and his ninja sidekick to deal with as well. They are trailing you throughout the whole quest, and disposing of them with a few well-timed kicks or hitting them into traps is a way of taking them out for a bit until they rematerialize. The two-player mode in this game is excellent, allowing a friend to take control of Yemo, and the game becomes a co-op adventure with Yemo, in theory, keeping the ninja at bay so you can solve the puzzles. It's an excellent addition and one of my favorite co-op games on the C64. The graphics are simple but do the job well, and Bruce controls easily and is quite simple to get to grips with. The intro music is really cool and gets you in the mood for the adventure ahead, and is another one of those hard to get out of your head once you heard it once kind of tunes. Checking out Datasoft's Zorro is also highly recommended, as it has a lot of the same gameplay mechanics as this. Overall though, Bruce Lee is a must-play C64 game. It's short, very memorable, and all the right places. Entombed was the direct sequel to Staff of Karnath we looked at earlier, and was released by Ultimate in 1985. It was the next Sir Arthur Pendragon game, and was another fantastic 3D styled adventure game with puzzles, action, and exploration being the focus once again. This is a big and massive game set in an Egyptian pyramid. The action can get a bit repetitive, but the sheer amount of environments, big, great, chunky graphics, and much more logical puzzles than Staff make it a great game to sink your teeth into. Matchday was released in 1986 by Ocean and is a piece of hot garbage of a soccer game. The C64 had a lot of good football games like Micropro Soccer or even the original International Soccer, so playing this poor excuse for a game is just not worth it. Horrible graphics, non-existent AR on your opponents, which is an understatement, a ball which has the physics of a corpse in a hot garbage bag, and the fact that you could dribble the ball from one side of the field to the other uninterrupted just shows that this game is a tragic, uninspired mess. They did a sequel to this game which is supposed to be pretty good, but I never actually played it, so you can roll the dice on that if you want to. And the other sports title on this compilation is Match Point by Scion, released in 1984. This is another early title that's pretty good for its time, and is the first tennis game I ever played on the C64, and found it to be quite fun. Me and my next door neighbor used to play this game for ages. The graphics and sound effects are quite good, and it's probably my second favorite tennis game on the C64, behind International 3D Tennis by Palace Software. And on to the final volume, which has Fighter Pilot, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Kung Fu Master, and Ghostbusters. This is the original release. Bear in mind that there's also a variation on this volume which has Daley Thompson's Super Test in place of Rambo. I'm assuming some sort of licensing issue. This is the first version though. So let's get the worst game on this compilation out of the way first, which is Fighter Pilot, released by Digital Integration in 1984. Now there are fans of this flight sim, but I'm just simply not one of them. I think the problem is the C64 has so many brilliant flight simulators that this game, for me anyway, just got lost in its mediocrity. Bland, ugly, Spectrum style graphics, mediocre sound, and it just wasn't much fun to play. Digital Integration also made Tomahawk, which is the same game in a helicopter, and liking these games was pretty hard, especially with the grand quality of those Micropro simulators on the Commodore, which were also available. Not a completely terrible game, just a mediocre effort overall for me. Kung Fu Master was released in 1985 by Data East based on the arcade game. This is a fantastic arcade conversion that retains everything from the original. The graphics are weirdly chunky, but if you look past that, you'll realize how well it plays, and more importantly, how much fun it is. I sunk countless hours fighting my way up the Tower of Death in this game, and it's a great addition to this compilation. Rambo First Blood Part 2 was released in 1986 by Ocean, based on the awesome Sylvester Stallone flick of the same name. Just like the movie, you had to rescue POWs from Vietnamese prison camps and escape by helicopter. Good run and gun action, cool selection of weapons, and nice graphics, supported by an excellent Martin Galway soundtrack, make this an excellent action game that I still put on every once in a while and have a good playthrough on. And last but definitely not least by any means is Ghostbusters by Activision, released in 1984, the same year as the epic movie it's based on. This game is just excellent, and what could have easily been some sort of generic platform movie license game became a brilliant Ghostbusters simulation, where you had to run the business from the ground up, buying equipment, making money, busting ghosts, and keeping the city under control until the final showdown with Zool. For a 1984 release, it has great music and lots of awesome from digitized speech. And clever and interesting gameplay switches. A fantastic game by David Crane, who was Activision's golden boy, who also did the excellent, unique Little Computer People on the Commodore 64 as well. Okay, so you're probably wondering, where can I get these compilations? Well, unfortunately, these would never ever be released digitally, just due to the amount of rights going on here. You got movie license stuff, you got stuff based on real people like Daley Thompson, you got games from so many different companies on here. You got Ultimate, who became Rare, you got Ocean Software Projects, you got Activision, there's US Gold. There's so many different companies happening here that came together to put games onto these compilations. Just the rights alone makes it impossible. So the best bet, I would say, is if you want to get physical copies, get it off eBay. I bought one of the volumes off eBay and the others from a different website. But eBay is your best bet. These compilations are not that expensive either, because I guess people don't desire to buy compilations to collect. Even though you're getting more games for your money, people like to collect individual games, and I agree with that, but these compilations are just really worth it, especially this They Sold a Million collections. As you've just seen, there's a really great selection of games. If you're getting into Commodore 64 games for the first time and you've got a whole physical setup, and getting some of these compilations is well worth it. You get a nice variety of games. The selection is very cool. One or two duds here, but most of all, it's pretty solid lineup. Also, these compilations are definitely not anywhere near as expensive as, say, the individual games. So if you want to get a whole bunch of C64 physical games all at once, if you're new to the system, and try them out, then getting these is well worth it. So thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I'm about to go play some games that I've just acquired. If you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.